What follows is part of a conversation with Larry Johnson, a former CIA analyst and official in the Office of Counterterrorism at the US State Department. We were having a great conversation when unfortunately Larry's internet cut out, but we both agreed that it was worth posting anyway. So be sure to subscribe and like the video and stick around for when we get Larry on fully very soon. Welcome back, everyone, to The Global Gambit, a podcast that looks at geopolitics, economics, international relations. My guest today is Larry Johnson, a former CIA analyst and US State Department official, someone who's got an extensive background in counterterrorism, intelligence analysis, and he's been known as someone to, I think, speak correctly at times to criticize the United States and its foreign policy in areas, well, like the Iran war, which is what we're going to be focusing on in this episode. Larry, it's been a long time coming. Delighted to finally have you on the show.
Very much appreciate the invite. Thank you.
No, absolutely. And I think that the first thing I want to get your take on is Trump yesterday had his speech, and there was a lot of speculation that it was going to be huge. I wasn't so sure because his State of Union was a bit of a nothing burger. I don't know. Take me through what you thought of it.
Have you ever seen the movie Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman?
Yeah.
You know, that monotone talk, that was Trump. To describe him as addled would be a compliment. He wasted so much. Well, number one, it was lie after lie after lie. For example, he claimed that the United States is producing more oil than Russia and China combined. No, actually, that's not true. Russia and China combined do produce more oil than the United States. He said that Iran was behind the bombing of the USS Cole. No, that was Al-Qaeda. In fact, Al-Qaeda and Iran were never buddies or hanging out together. Al-Qaeda actually tended to encourage terrorist attacks against Shia Muslims like the Iranians. His attempt to play the victim card that, the United States is just minding its own business, and those nasty Iranians, boy, they've been attacking us for 46 years. And they chant death to America, Well, conveniently ignoring and the fact that starting in 1980, Iraq, with the full encouragement and then subsequent support, military, financial, intelligence support of the United States, attacked Iran, started a war, used chemical weapons from 1983 through 1988, chemical weapons that were supplied by the United States. Our proxy, because we can call Saddam Hussein then our proxy, they were responsible for the deaths of over 300,000 Iranians, 70,000 civilians. So this Trump's puzzled. Well, God, why do they chant death to America? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it would have something to do with that. Just a wild guess on my part. Trump has been manipulating the market, both the oil market and the stock market. On Monday, when he started off by saying, boy, we're near the end. The victory's almost at hand. The Iranians, they're asking for a ceasefire. Stock market went up about 1,200 points in 2 days. And then the oil futures going into Monday, the Brent had pegged at like 118 a barrel. And with Trump's happy talk, plunged that down to like 101. But after his speech last night, the markets went in reverse. The Brent is back up to about 106 going up, and the stock market, it crashed this morning down about 600 points. Now they're trying to, it's come back a little bit, but the point is, everybody has this expectation that this is going to magically change, and it's not. And then Trump repeatedly is lying about talking to the Iranians. The Iranians aren't talking to him, and they're certainly not asking for a ceasefire.
There's a lot of, people like to call it fog of war, I think, but I think there's a deliberate amount of misleading by the Trump administration to manipulate the markets. As you say, I saw a good cartoon on Twitter earlier, which was sort of his press secretary wants to go out and give them an update, and the people behind him were like, wait, we just need to complete our bets, on the market. But I mean, what if he did have a strategy? What do you think it ever was, if he ever had a strategy? I know it's a stupid question, but I have to ask it.
No, there's no stupid questions. It's just you ask an intelligent question that's predicated on an assumption that there's some rational thinking going on within the Trump administration. And the sad fact is there isn't. I think they initially got hoodwinked by the Israelis. They're pinning it, at least Netanyahu's blaming David Barnea, the head of Mossad, for saying, hey, all we got to do is kill the top echelon of the Iranian leadership, political, military, and the country will collapse. The people will rise up, popular revolution, they'll overthrow them. Well, that didn't happen. And in fact, you've had what I call the 9/11 effect. In the United States, on September 10th of 2001, there was tremendous political division. Democrats are still just, quite angry at the Republicans because they thought George W. Bush stole the election from Albert Gore. Then comes the attack on September 11th. Well, then on the next day, September 12th, the country was united. People, the partisan differences really had disappeared, at least temporarily. That's what's happened in Iran. Whatever political opposition existed has virtually disappeared. The Iranian people are quite united. They feel this is really the second time in 46 years that they've been attacked without provocation. It's not like Iran has been going around looking for a fight. Just the opposite. So this time they are united, and the United States is, Trump and his efforts. They're trying to claim, oh, we want to get rid of nukes. No, we got to get rid of their ballistic missile, etc. And Iran seized the moment, and they took control of the Strait of Hormuz, and now have fundamentally changed the world's economy. That's what's going on.
So, from your experience, which is extensive on the inside, if you like, how does this compare to those earlier campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq, right? The war in Iran has always been, from my time working in DC, the peak of absolute potential conflict, other than obviously something over Taiwan with China. But like the idea of us going to war with Iran, it's 3 times larger than Iraq. The military is much more ideologically driven and is experienced and comprehensive. So like, what is going through Trump's head? Why on earth did they think, or Israel think, that this was a winnable or achievable sort of campaign?
Arrogance, hubris. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of dealing with some Israelis, particularly Israeli military. The most arrogant group of pricks I've ever encountered. I got to tell you, you can't teach them anything because they know it all. Well, we're the experts. Hey, experts, how you been doing against Hamas? You've got supposedly the best army in West Asia, if not the world. You've got tanks. You've got aircraft, both fixed wing, rotary wing. You've got overhead intelligence. You've got every advantage that you could ever have, and you're fighting a group. You've got 300,000 of you, and you're fighting a group of 30,000 insurgents who have rifles, some RPGs. They don't have artillery, tanks, none of that. And after 2.5 years, you have failed, utterly failed to defeat Hamas. So here's Israel talking the United States into, we got to take out Iran. And Trump and company fell for it. Look, we've done this. Let's go back to the attack on 9/11, and we blamed al-Qaeda. And al-Qaeda, bin Laden was holed up in Afghanistan. And the combination of CIA and U.S. Special Operations Forces actually made pretty quick work of it. They had bin Laden surrounded, but the Bush administration refused to send in any additional forces, whether it be called blocking forces, to pen him in and take him captive. So that started a debacle. With the neocons in charge, they became convinced we can make Israel safe and secure if we take out Syria, Iraq, Iran, Sudan. They had this whole list of countries they were going to go after, but it wasn't really a strategy. It was, more a dream. They didn't anticipate what would happen in Iraq, which at the time under Saddam was a Ba'athist party controlled, largely Sunni, but controlling a majority Muslim population that was Shia. And let's say 2/3 of that Shia population were closely aligned with Iran. So the U.S. had no idea that when they took out Saddam, and then the new people they put in were loyal to Iran, except we were still trying to fight Iran. So we loaded up Iraq. We made Iraq a stronger ally of Iran, and then we act surprised. But I knew, back at the time, L. Paul Bremer was named as sort of the viceroy of Baghdad, and he's known as Jerry. I knew Jerry. I'd literally had lunch with him a week before he got named to take that assignment. And when I heard it, I called him up. I said, "Boy, who'd you piss off?" And he goes, "Well, when the president calls, you got to say yes." So I said, "Well, here, Jerry, let me help you. Let me introduce you to Pat Lang. Walter Patrick Lang was a U.S. military officer that had set up the Arabic program, established and taught the Arabic program at West Point. He had served as defense attaché to Saudi Arabia and to Yemen, and he was the one that hand carried U.S. intelligence to Iraq during the Iraq-Iran War. So he knew Iraq better than any American possible. And I said, "Here, Jerry, you want to talk to him?" And Bremer goes, "No, I don't. I don't need to talk to him." So it's that kind of arrogance and stupidity that is typical. So what we're seeing right now with Trump and Iran is it's no surprise. This is not new or unique.
No, it's not. But in this case, it's not the 12-day war, right? It's not a limited campaign on specific sites. Wait.
Didn't you understand? This was a 3-day war, and they've already been defeated. The White House says so.
Apologies, Larry. Apologies, everyone. My mistake. I think I've been...
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
No, it's all right. I asked a silly question earlier. I deserve the response like that. No, thank you for keeping me humbled and aware of the reality of the situation. But let's pretend that if this war had continued as long as it has, perhaps, Larry, what exactly do you think the objectives have been? Or has it really been about updating it as Trump goes? Like you mentioned about regional players, and the Kurds were in the second week, I think, one of the primary things being pushed as a actor. Then that seemed to get forgotten about or sidelined, and it was all about the Strait of Hormuz and the British and the French and the Allies coming in to support that. And because they haven't done that, Trump's now lashing out at Europe again. So where do you think this has gone in Trump's head?
Yeah, I think the original objective was regime change, get somebody installed in Iran that will be the U.S. puppet. And what we need to step back and realize is Iran. I think the reason the United States is so obsessed with Iran for 46 years is Iran, with maybe the exception of Cuba, is the only country that had been a victim of a color revolution, a CIA operation that had overthrown the legitimate government, and then out of a popular revolution overthrew the U.S.-backed government. When the rise of the Ayatollah Khamenei,
Khomeini,
79, him coming to power wasn't the result of some covert action by the Soviets or the Chinese or the Martians or whoever. It was a genuine popular movement in Iran. Now, and boy, that just angered the CIA to no end. And we were never going to forget or forgive that. So get the regime change, so you got some puppet there that will do what it is told. That's the problem. And they thought that they could carry that out with that, strike on the 28th, and it failed. And now Iran has exercised an extraordinary amount of patience over the last 46 years. I mean, it has been repeatedly attacked, and with both conventional military as well as terrorist activities. Since 2003, the CIA has been funding, training, protecting the MEK, the Mujahideen al-Khalq, and actually it's a pretty old organization. They're described as Islamic communists. which I'm thinking, well, that's an interesting combination. But they started in 1965, and so they carried out terrorist acts against the Shah. But then from the 1979 on, they were targeting the Islamic Republic. When the U.S. came into Iraq, and they found that Saddam Hussein actually had an encampment for the MEK because they were carrying out attacks against Iran for him. CIA adopted him, put him under their wing, even though the MEK had been designated in 1997 by the U.S. as a foreign terrorist organization. That only lasted 15 years. In 2012, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama said, no, never mind, they're not terrorists, they're our guys. So, as long as they're doing our work, they can't be terrorists. They're freedom fighters. Gotta love labels.
Well, the labels always adjust depending upon who you ask or what you're talking about. Absolutely. I guess what I'm curious also about is there's a lot of disagreement within the Trump administration, let alone, I think, between Israel and the US about their strategic objectives. I think it's clear to most that even if the US and Iranians did agree to something, I'm not going to pretend I know what, the Israelis would continue this. Do you think that that's realistic, or they can't because they need the US involved?
Well, Israel can't. Israel's in trouble. I mean, that's an entirely different chapter of this discussion. Let's just, before turning to that, let me just point out the United States, despite having the most expensive military in the world, despite having some of the most technically sophisticated equipment, has created an anachronism. And here's why it is an anachronism. The carrier, we're based, we've got a triad. We got the land-based force, we got the Air Force, and then we got the sea power. Well, the aircraft carriers, really came into their own in World War II. And that was a way, you get your planes close to a land, and then they can fly off and penetrate. But now in this era of hypersonic missiles, those carriers are sitting ducks, and they have to stay offshore. So in the case of the USS Abraham Lincoln, it had these F-35B jets on its deck. Well, they have a combat range of 600 miles. The carrier is sitting about 800 miles offshore. So, okay, they take off, they fly, and then somehow you got to get them refueled. Except if you're going to refuel or aircraft that close to the Iranian shores, they're likely to get blown out of the sky, just like one got blown out of the sky last week. So the aircraft carrier really, it's $15 billion for the latest one, I think, the Gerald R. Ford, and they didn't get the plumbing right, and I guess it's susceptible to dryer lint fires. So, it's not, the carriers are no longer a factor. Troops, well, it used to be 23 years ago, we were able to gather up 165,000 guys and gals, deploy them to Saudi Arabia. They sat around in camps ready to go. Give us the word, coach. We'll go charging forward. Iraq at the time they had some Scuds, but they weren't very accurate, and they had no way to really hurt the U.S. forces. Today, you try that, just put 10,000 guys in one location, and they're going to be bombarded with drones and missiles. The point is, there's no safe place that you can assemble a ground force anymore without them being subject to attack.
Thanks for watching. That was a conversation with Larry Johnson. If you enjoyed the video, then do give it a like. But more importantly, consider subscribing to know when Larry returns for the full, uninterrupted interview and many more future appearances. Now, on to the next video, and click here to understand how the Chinese are seeing the war in Iran.